Look at your floor. How about no?
What, an MG driven oil?
Yeah,
What are they gonna do now?
That's probably water from the snow outside.
Yeah, right.
Rob, you want to tell us what we're going to do today?
Well, today we are going to do tie rod ends, rack boots, and while we're in there, we're going to do a set of sway bar bushings. Now you see a lot of little videos like TikTok and stuff, people just go whap with a big hammer and it pops loose. On these MGs it doesn't usually happen quite that easily. They tend to take a little bit more than that to get them to come out. But if you use a pickle fork and you're going to reuse this because you're just doing boots, you'll tear up the boots on the tie rods and that'll replace tie rods anyway. Now if you are going to try to do that, put a bar in here and put a lot of pressure up on it when you hit that and it'll help it pop loose. But you get one of these little tie rod separators like this, as soon as you get one of these, you'll never go back doing it any other way. You just put this in here, it doesn't tear up the boot, seated properly. And that easily.
Beautiful.
Then doing rack boots, and you guys doing rack boots and doesn't want to replace this, and I do a pickle fork in here and tear them up, and you know they don't want to pay for another set of tie rod boots, or tie rod ends. So this saves time and money. You just- No matter how stuck they are, they'll pop out every time without damaging the threads. All right.
So how do I know if mine need replaced?
Well,
Take a look at.
like in this case, the rubber's just falling apart,
Okay.
right? But also, if they get worn enough, you can kind of feel it in the steering,
Okay.
but you can get in here and you can kind of shake it and it'll move.
Okay.
But anymore, we rarely see them get that worn out, because people don't drive them as dailies anymore, usually it's because the rubber is just perished. But it's also a good idea, which I should have done this before, to pop this loose while this is still connected. But since you're taking the nuts off, you want to count the number of turns, so when you put them back on, put them on the same number of turns. And then for alignment purposes, you should be really close. Doing alignments, the only adjustment on these things is toeing. There's no other adjustments. So when you go pay for $89.99 for alignment, all they're doing is setting toeing, and then they tell you we can't do anything else.
Which is that adjustment right there.
Which is that adjustment right there. I can do it here in about 10 minutes.
$289.
Because you figured out. As long as you're the salesman selling the job, it's $289.
Yeah. We can get that done.
So,
Those other guys don't know what they're doing.
the only way to adjust anything else, you gotta do shimming and various other stuff because they don't provide any adjustments for caster, camber, or anything within the suspension.
What kind of camber do you like on these cars if you have trouble with adjusting that?
Depends on how you're using it.
Street,
I mean, I got mine set to about 2 degrees negative.
oh really?
Yeah.
But you up this for autocross?
Yeah. I forget what they suggest for these things. It's something like 1/2 degree positive or between 1/2 degree positive and 1/2 degree negative, something like that. It's not like his car. He's got a Triumph Spitfire. Boy, yeah, read the numbers on that. And you go, what the heck? They went like 2 degrees positive. It's factory settings. It's like, yeah. But you can go up to about 2 degrees negative without extreme tire wear, but you are going to get more tire wear. And the negative camber A-arms will generally get you about a degree to a degree and a half.
Oh really?
Yeah. And then there's actually bushings. You can do offset bushings in the upper A-arm, upper too. and tweak it and adjust it.
Yeah, I tried those and one side kept moving. So I
Yeah.
kinda,
Well, there's different ways of dealing with that, but. And the clamps and what's available changes all the time. I've seen them come with the right clamps, I've seen them come with worm clamps, come with zip ties, sometimes I've seen them come with just transfer one end and not the other. It changes all the time.
I've seen plastic cable ties.
Yeah.
I tried those.
I always threw the zip ties away, but the originals back on if they were usable. But I always also kept the originals in an old bin, so if they weren't usable, I always had some to put on. I just keep that stuff around. When I'm on town, if I'm ripping a car apart for parts or whatever, I keep that type of stuff around. And then when you're putting these on, you want to think about like which way the clamps are going to go so that you can work on them, reach them and clamp them okay, and not be trying to run into the bracketry or anything else. Same thing with putting the hose clamps on. Think about how you're going to get the screw to it as you're putting it on. You're going to get a screwdriver to it as you're putting it on.
And we showed the play,
Oh yeah. You got the inner tie rod here. You want to also feel for the play in here. Oh hey, part of the old boots here from the last time. You feel the play here. If it's really, really sloppy, these things can be tightened up or replaced. Most people end up just putting racks in them these days when they're that bad, but they can be. But you kind of have to do it on the workbbench.
I haven't used, I did use the aluminum.
We're not gonna take that yet. We gotta check the on Georgia.
So our first trip to the quarry.
Yeah, exactly. There's a damper assembly right here. It's got a spring underneath it and a little piston in there. And the easiest way to fill these things up is through there. And if you have any slop within the steering, there's shims in there. And if it's really sloppy off center, you can take one of those shims out and tighten it up to account for wear. Now I just take these two bolts out. It's a little snug to get in here to fill it, but I show you what I do to make it work. In this rack, I don't think it has any play in it, so we're not worried about shimming. There's usually some really thin shims that are only like 5,000 thick. So if you have a couple on here, this one's already been taken out. So if you have a loose rack, you can take one of those 5,000 shims out, put it back in, and it'll usually tighten things up.
I can't stand it any longer. I'm going the extra mile.
Just take a little.
Yeah, my OCD was starting to act up too when I look into that puddle down there.
Well, I'm used to seeing puddles. So.
There's a damper spring with brass goes in there, and that's what actually dampens it. Keeps it shaking around and rattling. And the spring can actually get a little weak over time as well. But take that thing out. Get one of these cans here. I bent the end of it at an angle. This is a 16-ounce can. Fill it about halfway and just pump it in here. You gotta be kind of slow. You gotta give it time because you'll fill it up and it'll blow up. So you gotta kind of put a few pumps in there and then kind of let it sit for a second as it works through, and you can just put 8 ounces of fluid in it. And it's a whole lot easier than all these crazy ways of jacking one side up, taking a boot loose, trying to put it in there, and everything else you hear about.
Spitting it in with a straw doesn't work, does it?
And like, usually first you notice it, they work it back and forth, and it never says how much. 8 ounces is the recommended amount. Just put 8 ounces in. And like I said, half a can of this, since this is a 16-ounce can, and you're done. So the MGB and most other British racks, not all of them, all just use 80-90 euro. Even like the MGA, where it has what looks like grease fittings on it, that's not for grease. It's for 80-90 oil, and there's a special grease gun, or a special oil gun to push them through those fittings. And the one that's available today leaks. You probably about a third of everything you're pushing hits the floor, and the rest goes in the rack. So they're a little messy. Taper a little bit. This is what you do.
Tape 2.
Yeah. Sometimes we do 5. So one thing you can do with these, because if you just try to round them up, they're just going to spin. And since it is tapered, you can just give it a couple of whacks to kind of seat it in the taper. And then it'll tighten just fine. And 3 or 4 Ugga-Duggas is about right. Sometimes the rubber keeps it from wanting to seat properly. Now we can drop it down, check the toe in, and see where we're at. Or a 9/16 bar. GTs have a 5/8 bar. So.
That was the one
You say the BGT has a thicker bar?
5/8 bar, yeah.
that, oh,
Unless, mine doesn't.
Well, it was that extra.
Mine's got a
weight.
1-inch, 1/8 inch toe end, and right now we've got 1/8 inch toe on these bars. Because these are longer than what the tire is. So we are 5/16 right now. So that means we need to toe this thing out some. And I think his steering wheel is crooked to this direction. And so if we're going to straighten this out and go this way, and that means we want to take that side out to help straighten the wheel and get our toe in right. Fully, so it'll slip a little bit, but if it isn't too loose, it can lift more off. After we're doing that, always want to move the car back.
there was one I saw last
And
week.
back forward.
It was aluminum John boat. And they
Before
put
checking
Chevy
it.
truck cams in. It's really a big thing in Kentucky. That's where one of the guys that works for our company lost everything.
My dad used to have these old stuff like this for him all the time back in the day, and then when he stopped working, I got all the stuff.
Put it in the slot, Jim.
So you can read it. They can see.
Well,
It might be.
Is that all the way in? Is that all the way in?
Yeah.
Alright, so now we're at.
Nice. How many times do you try to hold it?
We're about where we're going to be now.
Keeps falling off.
Yeah. So then what we do is we go take it for a test drive, see if the steering wheel's straight.
What key
If it's not straight, then we just adjust both sides to get it straight. So we get, with the longer, with these being longer than the wheels,
You can have your shot
we're
at
looking
that.
at something more like 1/8 of an inch towed in. So where at the tires, it will end up being like 3/30 seconds, which is about what they recommend. The more towing you have, the more stable the car will be.
So what have you got now, about an 8?
About an 8.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Is that good, an 8?
with these bars, because the bars are longer than the tires. Because within the tires, you want about 3/32 seconds. So with the bars, you're going to go a little more than that to actually be at 3/32 seconds.
So you just loosen the lock up to the inner?
Yeah, and then turn to the inner
The inner one.
to get it where you want it with the string wheel straight. So now we just got to take it for a quick spin, make sure the string wheel is straight, and then we can lock it down.
So how are we all gonna spin in the car? I think we're spinning part.
It's like a clock down.
Yeah.
I'll be the last one.
It's not a Volkswagen Bug though.
Oh, man. We did that to you.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's, so when you go for an alignment, what I just did, when they're charging $89.99, they're doing what I just did, and that's the only adjustment there is.
Only adjustment to it.
Yeah. It's like when you said places that'll do alignment, that's all they're doing, just what I just did just now.
But they're putting it on their $8,000 rack.
Yeah.
The laser beam.
that company.
Yeah.
That'll probably be like this one, you move it, half the rust will fall off. I saw that was hilarious. So what'd you charge for an alignment, Rob?
$89.94.